You're listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. Join hosts Matt Trush and Felix Friedberg's heart-to-heart conversations with artists, entrepreneurs, scholars, and laymen who, by strengthening their trust in God despite all odds, experience outright miracles. Profound yet practical, inspiring and heart-wrenching, moving true stories of triumph against adversity. Trusting in God can literally save lives. And now, Gate of Trust podcast hosts, Matt and Felix.
Hey, Matt, I've got a really good one for you today. It's so good, in fact, that even Sandy likes it. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
All right, here it is. Esther and Shmuley Rothenberg are getting ready for bed, and Esther is looking at herself, her reflection in the full-length mirror. She says, all I see in the mirror is an old woman, wrinkles, bags under my eyes, fat on my legs, flab on my arms. Shmuley, tell me something positive so I can feel better about myself. So Shmuley thinks for a second. He's very thoughtful. Well, Esther, I do have something very positive to say. The good news is there's nothing wrong with your eyesight.
Jokes aside, Felix, today we have someone really noteworthy on the Gate of Trust podcast.
That is true. Bari Mitzmann looks like she has it all together. A happy marriage, successful business, and an impressive Instagram following.
But behind the scenes, Bari suffers from crippling pain, emotional stress, and even trauma. She's not alone.
One day, Bari broke free from the facade and shared with the world how much she was really suffering. This began Bari's journey to bring meaning to her pain, for herself, and for others like her.
Bari launched the Woman of Valor podcast, where she speaks openly about dealing with mental illness, anxiety, trauma, and more. Where did she find the bravery? By strengthening her trust and partnership with God. Now there's nothing, physical or spiritual, that can hold Bari back.
Let's get to it, Matt. Let's hear from the powerful Bari Mitzmann. Bari, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
It's not hard when doing research to see that you're involved in so many things. You're a modest fashion influencer. You have a huge Instagram following, and you're also a thought leader in the mental health space. On your website, bariana.com, you describe yourself as passionate about helping people. Of course, I love fashion, food, exercise, all those things. I've struggled with both chronic and mental illness and advocate for more awareness of these illnesses whenever I can. So really looking forward to hearing more from you about these topics.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm excited to dive into whatever it is you want to know. I am sort of an open book when it comes to these sort of things, but the reason for that is not because I feel the need to share, but I have a passion, like you said before, to help people. And I know that I felt alone in my own struggles. So to be able to help others in theirs, I'm happy to alleviate that feeling of loneliness that other people may feel.
Bari, you also know my wife, Yael. I know that
Yes.
you are podcast friends, and you are the host of the Woman of Valor podcast. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that, where we have candid discussions and practical advice for the modern woman. Please tell us all about all these things that you do, how they all fit in. We have modern fashion influencer, we have Instagram, huge following, and also you're a businesswoman, you're a podcaster, you have mental health advocacy. Tell us all about these things and how they all fit in, and where bitachon, trust in God, fits into it all.
So I keep myself pretty busy. let's just put it that way. But as the husband of Yael, I'm sure you can understand what that's like. You have exposure to a woman who is very similar. I started off doing social media content while I was working in the field of outreach. I was working for a nonprofit organization that gave me an opportunity to apply for a grant for professional development. And it was a small grant, but my boss told me I could apply for anything that I think would help me professionally. And I applied for money for clothing. My pitch was, if I'm going into different public schools all across the Las Vegas Valley, I need to look presentable while still adhering to my modesty standards, so that people might be open to dressing more modestly while still expressing their individuality at the same time. And I mentioned in passing, and I will share some of that on social media. So I got back an immediate yes with an emphasis on, and we can't wait to see what you do on Instagram. And I was like, oh, you guys read that part. Okay. So I started posting. I didn't have a tripod or anything or any of the fancy gear that I have around my office right now. I was also tutoring in the local yeshiva day school. So I was taking selfies of myself with my arms stretched out as far as they could go. I am all but 5 feet and 3 inches tall, so it doesn't get that far. But an attempt to, take pictures, tag different brands, and just show my outfits. But I wasn't quite sure what it is that I was doing. I was just like, okay, this is a social platform. Let's just try this, and shifted my own personal account of like just updating people on my life and connecting with others. I shifted that a bit. And I started getting reached out by like smaller companies. Can we send you a belt? Can we send you a pair of earrings? Can we do a giveaway? Because working with smaller content creators, you don't have to pay them. They're happy to accept items as a form of payment. When in reality, those smaller accounts that I now learned is in addition to all the things that you mentioned, I also am a social media marketing consultant and have my own social media marketing course that is well underway. The first cohort just actually reached the halfway point of the 8-week program.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been really good. I got an amazing testimonial today, so I'm still at a little bit of a high. Like, people aren't having questions because they're just like, this is very clear and concise and like it's giving me everything I need to know. So like, I don't really have questions. I'm like, can I save that for later? They're like, yeah. So like, okay, like collecting my own little testimonials for the next cohort. But it got to a point where I was connecting with different brands that are like, you know what, Bari, you really need to get paid for this. Like, I'm like, no, I can't take any money. You're so good to me. And they were like, why don't you just take a percentage of the sales that come through you? So I started with affiliate marketing and then went up to, actually getting paid for collaborations. And now I'm at a point where we have contracts and invoicing and showing statistics and insights before and after media kits, etc. But at some point during the initial part of influencing, I hate that word, but content creation rather, I was expecting when I started creating content, and then my daughter was probably around 2 or 3 months old when I broke, and I was like, this is incredibly unattainable. Why am I getting dressed in matching outfits with my daughter? Well, I like can't even get out of bed. Like, I'm posting once a week because that's the only time like I'm getting dressed once a week. So I finally just posted on my Instagram saying, you know what, that's it. I can't pretend like I have this all together. I know I look cute with my daughter and everything, but like, I'm suffering here and this is horrible. And I just can't pretend anymore, and let's try something else. And I wasn't sure what the response would be, but I got dozens and dozens of messages. Some people asking me for forgiveness because they were jealous. They were like, listen, I have a child that's 1.5. Your child's 3 months old, and you have it more together than I do. I was getting a little jealous. So like, do you forgive me? Like, I hope I didn't give you like evil eye. I hope I didn't give you ayin hara, And I'm just like, okay. And then other people were like, thank you. In this little world of fully curated content, getting a dose of reality makes me feel like I'm normal and that I'm okay. Because back then, 5 years ago, Instagram was not all about the videos and can you juggle while on a unicycle and like flip upside down for people to like you. It was more just curated, beautiful images. And that started a shift. And then about a month before my daughter turned 1, I launched the Woman of Valor podcast because I realized that I had many experiences and many women that I connected with in the social media space and in my personal life had messages to share that could help other women. And the whole idea is, I'm not sure the source for this, but there was a Dvar Torah that I heard that when you recite Eshet Chayil, the Woman of Valor, it's not necessarily one woman individual, but rather different sentences, different parts of it relate to different women in Tanakh, in the Torah, in the prophets, and stuff like that. So the whole message was that you don't have to do it all yourself, because in reality you can't. So
you might read the Eshet Chayil prayer or song and think that, oh my gosh, I have to be all of those things. And you're right. One is Sarah, one is Rachel, one is Rivka, etc. You don't have to be the woman who's got everything put together. You actually could just have a little slice of something. Every person has his or her own area where they excel in. But to read the Eshet Chayil prayer could sometimes feel overwhelming. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And if you know the source for that, I'd love that later because
There's a beautiful Steinsaltz book, I think, that's
okay.
That's illustrated with paintings. It's very beautiful. And I think it talks about which each line may refer to a different woman from Tanakh.
Well, I will need to buy that then because that is basically the whole MO of the podcast. It's just like you don't have to do it alone and you can't. So let's do it together and let's find support. So I've had women come on speaking about infertility. I've had women come on speaking about, the single life and the pressure that they feel when people speak to them, and they were quite fine, enjoying their life being single at the point that they were in. Since then, that guest has gotten married. And since the Struggle with Infertility podcast, that woman actually has 2 children. Thank God. Wonderful. We have women who have founded different organizations that help many different women at all different stages of life. We're not only focusing on the mother. We're not focusing only on the seminary young woman. We're focusing on different prevalent issues that may affect a woman at any point in her life or may affect a loved one at any point in their life. In addition to my own struggles, sharing about my struggles with Lyme disease. I battled Lyme disease for 6 years. And then I had specialists come on because I didn't feel qualified to solely tackle the idea of peripartum depression and anxiety alone. Though it was something I experienced, I'm not a mental health professional. So I had a panel of women who are part of an organization called Nefesh Achat B'Yisrael, also known as Just One Life, to discuss that. We tackled disordered eating around the holidays. And based on that, here's another thing I do. I founded a nonprofit organization that creates publications focused around different holidays where different women contribute essays for practical inspiration, not something that feels too far away. Sometimes we listen to a class or we hear a story and we're just like, okay, well, that doesn't apply to me at all. So I'm just going to let that one go right over my head and just continue going about my day. But seeing women for where they're at, empathizing with their struggle, validating their struggle, and giving them some inspiration too. Well, I understand that this holiday might not be the best holiday for you. However, here are some ways that you can elevate it and make it more meaningful to you. So we've definitely kept busy. My husband's been extremely supportive in all of this. Anytime I bring up a topic, I say, can I discuss this? And are you comfortable with me discussing this aspect of my own life? I don't really discuss anything about my husband. And his answer has always been, I think it's going to help a lot of people. And he's the back end person doing the website, doing the podcast, doing all those things, because that just makes me dizzy. So Hashem set us up really nicely because he's a web developer, a digital marketer, and he was concerned that, someone that he would date wouldn't be comfortable, that he's more of an entrepreneurial spirit rather than having a regular 9-to-5. And I said, I thought that's pretty cool. And all that time I was a special ed teacher. My master's is in special education. Little did I know that it would actually really help me in the long run.
Wonderful shidduch.
Barry, you said something that I think is really significant. So you started earning money and doing all of these things related to your life and all of those topics. And then at some point you had to change what you were doing, which had to be frightening because you were making an income from it. And yes. So we learned in Shara Bitachon, Gate of Trust, about, really putting our trust in Hashem. So before I ask you the question about how you juggle all of these businesses and all of these different things that you're doing, can you sort of talk through how you were able to make that leap? Because obviously a lot of your success came from making that change, but it had to be frightening. How were you able to do that?
I wish the answer was inspirational, but the reality was that I didn't have a choice. My body became increasingly ill and my pain became so much that the medication that I needed to take disabled me from driving and operating heavy machinery. So I had to stop going to different public schools. I had to stop going to coffee dates with college students. I had to stop driving to the yeshiva to tutor. I was in bed. I was just like, what do I do? And as I was leaving, it was funny though, because I was leaving my job in the nonprofit sector. And at the end, Hashem snuck in an amazing shaliach. His name is Rabbi Jacob Rupp. He runs a coaching enterprise at this point. And he said to me before that, he was still Rabbi Rupp of San Diego NCSY. And he said to me, what are you going to do? Because I was quote unquote retiring from NCSY at that point because I couldn't do my job anymore. And I said, I don't know. He said, well, why don't you start a podcast? And I said, what's a podcast? And I never heard of them. So I'm just like, what is that? He, over that summer, from, I guess, May, I live in Nevada, so it's summer starting in like April. So from about May to July, he was providing me with different equipment, different recommendations, and everything that I needed in order to get my own podcast off the ground. And I really was just like, okay, this is what I can do right now. And I know that I have my own struggles. And it felt like my own struggles would be wasted if I just kept them to myself. So it was more of like a Hashem, like, I think this is all I can do right now. And just help me along with it, please, so that I can help whoever needs to hear it. And it's not about numbers for me. I'm super passionate about the idea that you don't need to be well known and you don't need to make world-changing actions in order to make an impact and in order to make change in the world. So anytime I've done anything, it's more like, okay, well, if one person can take something from this, and if not, it's probably really good for me to hear this again, because I don't share things that don't align with my own beliefs or my own struggles.
So the teacher often learns more. But I would say this, you say you didn't have a choice, but there's this thing that we hear about in the last few years where people do what's called ghosting, right? So you could have ghosted. You could have just disappeared and not continued to share and not find ways to share your message, but you did, Baruch Hashem, and it really is great. So then now you have all of these enterprises. How do you keep up with everything? You have a lot. You help with brands, social media marketing, content creator, founder of IBA, mental health advocate, host Woman of Valor podcast, Instagram influencer. It took me a few minutes just to even say what you do.
Yeah, I was getting a little tired as you were saying that. So people just assume that I'm an avid coffee drinker, but I'm actually not allowed to have caffeine. My body does not react well. My anxiety is majorly heightened, and I get what I call the shakes, where like my hands, I can't even hold my phone. I even remember in seminary when I started teaching myself that it's okay to give to myself, I would get myself an iced cafe, the like frozen blended iced coffees. And I just remember trying to call my mother at like right before it was Shabbos in New York. And I'm on the phone and she can barely hear me because my phone's to my ear, but my hand was just shaking. So at this point, I can't dehydrate myself to that point. It takes a lot more planning and forethought. That's the first thing. One thing that I've gotten into is actually meditation, being able to sit down for 15, 20 minutes and try and just re-energize, because honestly, I could sleep all day. I could. My body in general, and because of like living in pain for so long, my body's at this point that it's almost like naturally inflamed, that like I could really just sleep all day. But being able to reset and kind of connect to my body, and I also really ask Hashem for help. Like, it's like, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm really not. I mean, the money is not even only for myself. It's to feed my family. I have 2 beautiful children, Baruch Hashem. I have a wonderful husband, and we have responsibilities. We take care of my father-in-law, who unfortunately has early onset Alzheimer's. And my husband took on the beautiful mitzvah of giving not only 10% of Meiser, but he gives 20%, which I then took on myself, which meant every time I get a paycheck, it kind of stings a little bit knowing that 20% of that is already gone. But I know that's the way we've been able to survive and be able to have what it is that we need. Like, never in my life did I think that I would be able to have my own office in my own home. And Hashem brought it to us at the right time. And I truly believe that my husband's minhag of giving 20% and then me following that is the reason why we've been able to support ourselves and be able to help with my father-in-law and things like that. But delegating is a huge thing. Like I just decided yesterday that I am creating a Rosh Hashanah Hakol B'Seder. And I reached out to a number of people, and I'm just like, okay, like, can you get me something within these 3 weeks or not? Because like I've done this enough times. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have my copywriter. I also understand that I have to invest in it, or else I'm going to have a breakdown. So have my copywriter. You know what? Instead of me keeping tabs on the contributors, I'm going to have my copywriter keep tabs on the contributors, help guide them so that I don't have to do that. I'll be in touch with the artists. I'll be in touch with the printer. I'll be in touch with all of those things. But to keep tabs on everyone is going to be too hard.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, so I'm just trying to understand. What is a Rosh Hashanah call? The project that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. What is that?
It's part of my nonprofit. Hakol B'Seder started because it was a Passover companion. So Hakol B'Seder, everything is in the Passover Seder. It was a play on words. Mm-hmm. However, it became so popular and just well known because it also means it's all good in Hebrew. So even when everything's not so okay, like it's also okay type of thing. Everything's in its order. Everything's okay. So these companions that we've created, it's not a Haggadah. It's more of a supplement to whether it's a Haggadah or it's a Machzor. We did a Yom Kippur companion. We did a Purim companion. We did a Hanukkah, 8 nights and 8 different types of self-care with mini challenges. It's different essays from different women, some well-known, some not well-known, some people that like only their friends and family have heard of, sharing either personal anecdotes or practical insights to the different holidays in order to elevate the holiday. So say for Passover, for Pesach, what we did was we had each woman take on one of the steps of the Seder and create an anecdote or a personal story or a Dvar Torah based on that one step. So that when you're like, okay, we're up to Kaddish, we're up to Kiddush, Shavi Samit had a whole thing about what is Kedusha, what does that even mean? And then you go to Orchatz, and there was my friend Esther Levy, who runs these amazing restorative yoga and meditation classes, spoke about the cleansing and it was just really, really cool to do. And I feel very blessed to be able to be the facilitator. It's not all me, but to be the facilitator is a huge honor. To know that, let's say that second Pesach that I did it, or even the first where I did it in 3 weeks by myself. It was some Divrei Torah that I had from seminary because I had an entire 6 months learning the Haggadah with some artists who contributed artwork. I knew that there were 500 individuals or more that were sitting at their Seder taking inspiration from this. And then the next year, I know that there were 1,000 households that had this at their table. And even if I was having a hard time during the holiday, I was able to take comfort in the fact that but I have this merit, and that's okay.
Beautiful. I want to go back to what you said about giving 20% of your earnings to tzedakah. And that's a big bracha a bracha for your husband, a big bracha for you, and bracha for taking care of your family. It seems counterintuitive, however, that you are giving more away, and yet you see that that's the source of your bracha. So as students of Bitachon and Trust, tell us how you do that and where you see the return.
So I was always very, very thorough when it came to giving 10%. I'm like, okay, that's what we do. You give 10%, no problem. And as a teacher's assistant, when I started, that was a lot because, they don't make much, but I was just like, but that's what you do. Like 10% is not mine and it's supposed to be going somewhere else. And then when I was dating my husband told me, and I was like, that's beautiful. Good for you. And then I think a year or so into our marriage, I was like, you know what? Fine. I mean, that was your minhag. That was your custom. Like, okay, I'll do that now. Let's try it. Let's see. And sometimes it's been hard. And there were other times where it's like, oh, but this is a really big money opportunity. But I also know that after the fact of not making as much as I would have liked to after giving the 20%. But I also know that it's not necessarily my actions that bring the income. It's not how much I do. I know that the income that we are going to get is already predetermined. And this is something that I know that this is one of the mitzvot that's essentially guaranteed that Beautiful. You can test it. So for me, I'm just like, okay, you know what? And we've had opportunities where we've given and it's beautiful to be able to be in that position right now. our funds are a little tight, being that caring for someone ill can be pretty pricey. We have to actually go back. My husband and I had to sit down and go back and be like, okay, how much money did we give? Did we give too much? And actually calculate, like, do we need to pay ourselves back? But it's something that we know we're taking care of. And even more so, we learn that it's not necessarily how hard you work, but just putting in work that brings a return. It doesn't have to be as stressful. So for me, it's like, okay, I have a really busy day. I have another podcast to record today. I have to record a class for IBA. The kids are coming home in a few hours, like, plus dinner, plus all these different things and more things for work and ads and blah, blah, blah. But I still need to take that 20 minutes to reset because I need to reconnect. I need to be present. And the more you stop, if you make sure you stop, the more efficient you can be. And also understanding that it's not you. Like whenever I do public speaking, I always say, Hashem, like I know the words are not coming from me. So Hashem, like, if I say something, I'm going to think, why did I say that? It happens every time something comes out of my mouth. And I was like, that was ridiculous. And then one or two people will come and say, I'm so happy you said X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay.
Well, beautiful. I'm glad you brought up the 20%. My wife, Yael, has always been a 20%er, and I've been the 10%er. And she's kind of pushing me onto her track as well. It's very inspirational. And like you said, this is like the heart of the gate of trust, that since God has determined exactly what you're going to make within this year, there's nothing you could do more or less to increase or decrease what you're meant to make. So by giving more, it can only be good for you. It can't hurt you. It's definitely something which is inspirational. The fact that you and your husband are doing it with all the great things that you're doing along with that great tzedakah, I think it's a great merit for our listeners to be inspired by. So I'm very impressed with all that. It's probably the secret to your success.
Very likely. Very likely.
I actually
and also
saw
becoming a vessel.
You said 20%
believing.
and 20 minutes. We come up with a new phrase today. So 20% and 20 minutes. So the 20% is giving 20% tzedakah, and 20 minutes of taking time to meditate and relax and have some time to yourself and really recharge before you're ready to go back into the world. I think these are two really good pieces of advice that you shared with our listeners.
I want to take that further because the 20 minutes that I take, it's a process to try and become a vessel to receive. So it's less of like, I need to get out of my own head that this is all on me and it's all my actions and it's all what I'm doing and all that pressure. And then being like, you know what, Hashem, like make me a vessel to receive the abundance, the clarity, the concentration, the, effectiveness, and also just like the calmness so that I can handle the stressful situations better. That doesn't only apply to business. It also applies with my children and with my husband. I know I was telling my husband yesterday while they were napping, I went and I did 20 minutes of the meditation. And I said, you know what? I think the kids, I'm not sure if the kids were being really good after their nap or that I was being really good with them so that I was able to handle them better and their reaction to the way I handled them was better. Like chicken or the egg. I don't know, but either way it works. Becoming that more present, calm, less frazzled parent, they see that and they feel that.
I'm sure our listeners would like to know what you do during your 20 minutes of meditation, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. So the method that I've adopted, it's still new to me, this new method. So I'm not ready to like freestyle, but there is a woman named Emily Fletcher who created something called the Z method, which is, it's a breakdown during somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes of mindfulness. So getting your body in the present to be present. Then there's the meditation, which is being more open. Like first you like open up your senses or you like ground yourself through like sight, smell, hearing, whatever, so that you're actually present. And then being able to just repeat something to yourself, something like, novado, or just something like whatever it is that'll ground you, even just saying one, just saying, or my body is healthy, saying it over and over in your head. And then comes the manifestation of, okay, here's what's going to be happening today, or here's something that's coming up, or here's something that I need to really like knock out. something I really need to like slay at. And you imagine yourself doing it. And how is that going to make you feel when you ace that? And how is it going to feel when so yesterday what I did was I was like, okay, I decided I'm going to be doing this Hakol Seder. What am I going to feel when I finally open up that printed copy? What am I going to feel when somebody sends me a message about how much they're enjoying it or something that spoke to them or thanking me for doing it? Or how am I going to feel knowing that on Rosh Hashanah, even if I'm at home with my kids, knowing that someone else who's home with their kids is just going to be looking at the same book that I am and feeling, you know what, like this is what I'm meant to be doing. And this is the way that I'm going to connect on Rosh Hashanah. And then, coming back out of that slowly, like not too quickly, and then being able to just get on with your day. The
way that you organize yourself and the way that you pace yourself makes so much sense. And I guess the question too is for the people that are listening to our podcast, what would you say the most important thing for them would be, in terms of being able to take care of their mental health and dealing with anxiety and how bitachon may be a part of how to do that? So
it's funny because I was going to say, you know what, I didn't acknowledge that sort of figuring out. And it's funny because it sounds like I don't have any mental health struggles. It's like really not true. In the way that I was just talking about meditation and all that, like, no, like I go to therapy. I am on medication. I have no problem saying that out loud. I think it's important to say that. And I've had people say, it makes me feel good. Like, I'm kind of proud that like I'm struggling with this, but I'm like, oh, you know what? But like, Bari Mitzmann, like she also does take medication and she talks about it. So I'm okay. And I'm not saying that that's the solution. For me, that was medically necessary in order to be the best person that I can be. But I actually wrote an essay about how emunah, faith, and anxiety are not mutually exclusive. Anxiety can be from traumas that can trigger you, or it's just a feeling of loss of control, or it can be many different other things. I'm speaking from, personal experience. At the same time, using the idea that Hashem is taking care of you while also working on these things, I also understand that my anxiety came from Hashem. Like, this is part of my struggle. This is part of my test. How am I going to be the best version of myself while at times I can have crippling anxiety? And that I've learned that sometimes my body, not only do I have crippling anxiety at times, but there are also times where my body will violently react to something because my somatic response, my psychosomatic connection is extremely strong. So there'll be a day where I'll have, a really tough conversation with someone, and then I wake up the next morning and my arm isn't up. I've gone to neurologists. I've done all those tests and I thought it was Lyme disease. My Lyme specialist is like, no, that infection is gone. And the neurologist is like, I can't help you. And I was like, oh, okay, this is my body telling me something. So I've learned to understand that at times my anxiety or my somatic responses are really just a message from my body. And that's okay. I can have that cortisol response. And I'm working on that. And meditation through some different tests or things like that has been shown to help with inflammation, with anxiety. So I'm doing the best that I can while also acknowledging that when those episodes may happen, it's okay. And that might be my cue to rest, or it might be my cue to reevaluate. And it's just a message.
There's that story of the guy that's at the pearly gates, and he's complaining to God because how did these things happen to him? And then that's the famous story: I sent a helicopter, I sent boats. So it sounds to me like you've taken your struggles, you've acknowledged them, you've accepted them. And then there's also another famous line that says, when you get butterflies in your stomach, make them fly in formation, right? Like how jets fly in formation and they go to battle. It sounds like on the one hand, you accept it. And then on the other hand, it sounds like you pull yourself together with Hashem, with your breathing practice, with your meditation practice, with mashpiyas, and you use all of the resources that Hashem has provided you. And you don't say, well, you never sent me anything. You see all of these things in the world and you accept them all, and you've used them and you've channeled them to be success. Is that an accurate assessment?
I would like it to be.
That would be my observation. That would be my observation, that you're a human being. You see that these challenges occur and you're transparent about them, and you acknowledge that you have them, and you're open that you have them. both to help other people and to help yourself. And then you take these various solutions that are at hand, and you're not afraid. You're not afraid to try them. You're not afraid to utilize these methods of getting the success that you need for yourself and for the people that follow you and for your family.
It's more of a reprioritization that I've had for myself. And there's a lot of trauma that's been undone. I spent 9 months doing trauma therapy. So I'm actually, thank God, I'm in a good place where I can actually notice these things and not say, well, I'm a terrible person and I'm a failure and I'm all of these things and get myself into a horrible cycle of self-berating, but rather acknowledging, saying, okay, I'm human. I have my limitations, but that's not a negative thing. And I can know, I'll be like, okay, Hashem, that was you. Like, what do you want from me at this point? I didn't make my stomach decide to get incredibly inflamed and have pain for days. That wasn't me. What do you want? Just let me know what you want. Okay. We can have a conversation. Just let me know what you want for me to hear. If you want me to rest, I'll rest. That's fine. But if you want me to go do things, I need to feel better. So you just let me know. Okay. and then also trying to take care of myself. It's an understanding that there's a relationship here. It's a partnership. I believe that healing my body, I may not have the Lyme anymore, but there's still some stuff going on. I'm like, okay, but it's a partnership here. You're Rofei Chol Basar, you're the one that heals everyone. I have to do my due diligence here, but it's also on you. So let me know how that's going to work. It's kind of like a team meeting type of thing. And it's also alleviated the pressure. Like I said, with women, we often place a lot of pressure on ourselves and attribute everything to our fault and our flaws, but also realizing that there's another partner in this life adventure that's not human and can and does get involved, but you also need to let him, because that's something that I had a hard time doing. And I feel as though once I started letting Hashem help me with, my business, once I let Hashem help me with my health, with my mental health, that's where I'm seeing the results.
Fantastic. Very Mitzmann. It's incredible the way you have learned to take care of yourself and to bring all of these things to the world, but also how you've kept so close and even strengthened your connection with Hashem, with bitachon, with trust, with emunah, with faith. And you're really an inspiration to all of us, the things that you're doing. I know you have struggles, but I think what really is Felix is describing is that you're taking your struggles and you're transforming the darkness into light, which is really a high, high level of bringing one's life to a greater good to share with the world. So I'm very, very inspired by you. I think we're all inspired by you. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the Gate of Trust podcast. I can't wait to share this talk with all of our listeners. And I think you have so much to bring to the world. And I really encourage you to continue sharing your story and all the things you're doing. And I know with trust in Hashem, you're going to have a lot of success going forward as well.
Amen. Thank you so much. It's really been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Bari. You should have continued success. You should be able to double your contribution, and your 20% number should double and double again. So,
Amen.
Great job. Wonderful, wonderful meeting you.
Wow, Felix. Bari Mitzmann's strength is truly inspiring.
Matt, we were joking in the beginning of the episode about Shmuley and Esther, who all she sees is wrinkles and lost youth. Well, when Bari looks in the mirror, what she sees are not agonizing challenges, but potential opportunities. And with God's help, Bari has transformed her life and the life of countless others who are inspired by her bravery, transparency, and trust in God. Bitachon.
Hey, Felix. Are you and Sandy back to learning Gate of Trust?
We are. It's during our Shabbos coffee klatch.
Yeah, Elle and I are doing it too. 5 at 5, or at least 5 minutes of Gate of Trust at 5 p.m., often longer and not always at 5.
Well, that's pretty good, Matt. Ours is more like 10 at 10.
They say, Felix, couples that trust together, stay together.
Well, Matt, sounds right. We're both still with our first wives. So far, so good.
Keep up the trust, Felix. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Thank you for listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share the podcast with the people you love. To access today's show notes, ask Matt and Felix a question, or suggest a Gate of Trust story to be featured on the show, visit gateoftrust.org/podcast.
You think you got it under control, you're on a roll, living it up, living your dreams. But when it all goes bust at the seams, then you scream and cry to the one on high. He's been